Okay, so, before she was the world's youngest self-made female billionaire, Spanx founder Sara Blakely was doing something completely different. She was going door to door trying to sell fax machines. And it wasn't easy, because every day she would get rejected. But instead of giving up, she decided to take a different approach. Sara started calling ahead of time to let people know she was coming by to help them fix their FAQs problems. This way, instead of being met with a closed door, she was invited inside where she could pitch her product. So in today's video, we're gonna go back to the beginning and see what life was like before Spanx. When Sara Blakely was selling fax machines door to door growing up, Sara Blakely always wanted more than what she had. Despite growing up in a middle-class family in New Jersey, Sara had big goals. So much so that she set a goal for herself at age 27 to become a millionaire by age 30. By then, she had already taken small jobs selling Christmas trees, doormats, and cellular phone accessories just to make some extra cash. However, she knew if she was going to make her dream of becoming a millionaire come true, she needed a big idea. In the meantime, Sara got a job selling office equipment for a company called Tech. It didn't pay all that well, but it did come with commissions. So if she managed to close a deal, she could make some good money. One day, while working at an office, Sara noticed there was one thing they were missing: a fax machine. That's when she learned that someone at the company ordered one. So Sara decided to take matters into her own hands. The first person she knocked on was actually the person who ordered the fax machine. They said no, they already had one. So Sara continued down the hall. The second door she knocked on was the office of the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He ended up buying the fax machine from her, which made Sara $1,000, but she couldn't stop there. She had to return the loan to her parents and make enough money to sustain herself without a job. So she continued down the hall and knocked on door after door. This is when Sara realized that even though there weren't many people who needed fax machines, there were plenty of people who had a problem with their fax machines. So she started making cold calls and asking business owners if their fax machines were working properly. If not, she told them that she could come by and take a look at it. If they agreed, she would head over to their office and tell them that she was there to take a look at their fax machine. Then she would ask if they were aware that their fax machine was sending black and white pages when they needed color, or if they knew that their fax machine was untransmitting properly. Most people were clueless about these kinds of things, so they said yes. And that's when Sara would suggest that they buy a new fax machine from her. Now, this method was far better than going door to door and introducing yourself as a salesperson. In fact, it was so good that Sara was able to sell 30 fax machines in a single day. At this point, Sara was making twice as much as she used to, selling office equipment, but that still wasn't enough. She wanted to reach her goal of being a millionaire by age 30, in order to get closer to achieving her goal. Sara started taking evening classes at Emory University to learn about marketing. There she learned the importance of solving a problem with a product. For example, Sara says that Kleenex solved the problem of women needing something soft to remove their makeup. So Sara started thinking about problems she could solve. Around this time, Sara noticed something strange while she was shopping for underwear. Every single pair of underwear had a seam right down the middle. Now she thought to herself, why did they have to put a seam right down the middle? What would happen if they didn't? So Sara decided to do a little experiment. She took a pair of underwear and cut the seam down the middle. To her surprise, the underwear stayed together and looked flat. After trying this with several pairs of underwear, Sara realized that she had just stumbled upon a brilliant business idea. What if there was a piece of underwear that was invisible under clothes and could also smooth out your butt and reduce the appearance of cellulite? With that idea, Sara quit her job and used her $5,000 savings to start her company. She spent $1,000 to patent the idea, and then another $4,000 to create samples. Sara named her company Spanx because she wanted to be known as the person who gave women perfect Spanx. But now the hard work began. Sara had created the world's most comfortable pair of underwear, but nobody knew about them. So she started calling department stores to try and get them to carry her product. But one after the other, they all said no. Apparently, there was already a pair of underwear that served the same purpose, and those were the ones that department stores were carrying. Sara was frustrated, but she refused to give up. Instead, she decided to call Oprah Winfrey to see if she would be interested in carrying Spanx on her show. After making over 100 calls, she finally got a hold of Oprah's assistant, who surprisingly said yes. Sara was shocked. She couldn't believe that Oprah agreed to carry Spanx on her show. But Sara knew that she had to make the most out of this opportunity. Sara reached out to her friend from college, Sally, who worked at a hosiery company in North Carolina, and asked her if she could use some of their excess fabric to make samples. Sally agreed, and Sara spent the night sewing samples in her basement. The next morning, she brought the samples to Atlanta and drove to Chicago to meet Oprah's team. When Oprah first saw Spanx, she said, "I don't need to wear it. I can just look at it, and I know it works." Oprah immediately placed an order for 10,000 pairs of Spanx within 48 hours of appearing on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Sara sold out 12,000 pairs of Spanx. Overnight, Sara went from being a nobody to having the hottest product on the market. But despite the success, Sara didn't slow down. She doubled her production rate and sold 1 million pairs of Spanx in the first year. Since then, Spanx has grown to be worth over $1 billion. So how did Sara go from almost giving up and starting a low-level sales job to starting a multi-billion-dollar company? Well, we can pinpoint 3 main reasons. First, Sara never gave up. Even when she was making cold calls and selling fax machines, she didn't let rejection get to her. Instead, she used the rejections to fuel her motivation. Even when department store owners said no to her product, she didn't give up. Instead, she focused on solving the problem by finding the perfect pair of underwear that would smooth everything out. Second, Sara was persistent. Once she had the idea for Spanx, she didn't let go of it. Even when she couldn't find anyone to buy her product, she remained focused on her goal. She continued to work hard and hustle until she was eventually discovered by Oprah. And third, Sara was a creative problem solver. When she first started selling fax machines, she knew there weren't many people who needed a fax machine. So she focused on solving the problem of people whose fax machines weren't working properly. When she couldn't find a manufacturer for Spanx, she found a way to use excess fabric from another company. And when she needed funding, she bootstrapped her company by using her personal savings. If you want to succeed in business, you must understand that the journey to success is rarely easy. You will face obstacles and challenges along the way, but if you are persistent and never give up, you can achieve anything. Sara Blakely is a prime example of this. She faced many setbacks early on in her career, but she didn't let that stop her from pursuing her dreams. Instead, she used those setbacks as motivation to keep moving forward. She could have easily given up and accepted a low-level sales job, but she knew that she was capable of more. And through sheer determination and hard work, she achieved her goal of becoming a successful entrepreneur. Subscribe for more inspiring billionaire backstories every week. And as always, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.